And welcome to Football Debate Central Radio on the Pro Football Central Radio Network. We're back with another 1-hour episode here after Week 11 of the NFL season. A lot of things happened. Kansas City Chiefs and Denver Broncos played what was, I'd say, an uninspiring game for both teams on Sunday Night Football. San Francisco 49ers struggled against the New Orleans Saints and are now battling for their playoff lives. So we're going to have a lot going on here on Football Debate Central Radio. We're going to be talking to Joe Bussell, NFL Philosophy, as he's known on Twitter, and figure out what's going on heading into Week 12 and what happened in Week 11 of the NFL season.
Yeah! Alright, man, so we're going to try to do this a little bit better, alright? Yo, NFL Debate Podcast, the dopest. You already know this. Football Debate Central Radio is in orbit. Pro Football Central Radio Network. To all of y'all, Vincent, Frank is cool. Ryan Riddle is no fool. So go on and tune into Football Debate Central Radio. But then again, you already know that they ain't no how for the Seahawks. We go bad super like that AFC team. It's me, we let the debates begin, please.
Time now for Debate Central Radio Topic of the Week.
And hey, Ryan, so Sunday night, Kansas City took on the Denver Broncos in Denver, and it was not a good outcome for the previously undefeated Chiefs. What did you see there, dude, that gives you any idea or hope that the Chiefs can contend with the Broncos, or even the Patriots, I guess I'd say, in the AFC right now, dude?
Well, first of all, this was, one of the most anticipated games of the season. You got 9-0 versus 8-1, and everyone was sort of looking forward to this. It was the first real major competition for the Chiefs, their first test of the season, so to speak.
And the Broncos. And the Broncos.
And I guess, yes, for the Broncos as well. And a lot of the Chiefs' weaknesses that we've seen all season long were sort of exposed, and some of their strengths were neutralized, which was one of the most impressive things about this game. The Peyton Manning and the offensive coordinator devised this game to get the ball out quick, a lot of quick passes, prevent those bookends for the Chiefs to come around and apply pressure, banging up Peyton Manning even more, hurting that ankle, rushing him out of the pocket. None of that was happening. He had a clean pocket. He was able to get the ball away. They had a very smart game plan, and the Chiefs had no answer. And Alex Smith, even though he threw 45 passes, he just was not able to compete against the Broncos' offensive production. And that was more or less what you would expect from that game. However, Peyton Manning's health concerns were making this a more intriguing and possibly more even match game going into this. However, Manning is who he is, a legend, and able to overcome that.
Okay, listen. Peyton Manning had 16 incompleted passes, 1 touchdown, 323 total yards. Alex Smith had 24 incompleted passes, 282 yards, 2 total touchdowns. Wasn't far off from the way Peyton Manning...
282 yards. You're counting rushing.
282 rushing. Yeah, right. 282 total yards. Now listen, Alex Smith did not get any help from his receivers. Donnie Avery dropped a huge pass. Dwayne Bowe dropped 2 or 3 passes. They were not gaining the separation that the Denver Broncos receivers were gaining. That game is no way on Alex Smith. He played as best as he could possibly think. He could play in a situation like that going up against one of the better quarterbacks in the history of the league. It was more about their pass catchers letting him down and their pass rush letting them down. Listen, you have left tackle for the Denver Broncos, Chris Clark, who is obviously replacing one of the best left tackles in the NFL.
Doing a good job.
Ryan Gladdy doing well. Yeah, and he totally neutralized what was considered the best front in the NFL. And, well, them in Carolina.
From a pass rush standpoint.
From a pass rush standpoint. And those are the areas that I think let down Kansas City more than Alex Smith.
They did, and it was imperative that the Chiefs were going to have to get pressure on Peyton Manning, especially given his condition, his bad ankles, his inability to move around in that pocket. And they didn't do that. They didn't step up to the plate. And give credit to Denver Broncos game planning and getting the ball away quick on Peyton Manning's end. But, I agree with you. I'm not trying to blame Alex Smith for this loss, but Alex Smith could have played when you throw 45 passes, you kind of want to get around 300 yards. Otherwise, you're struggling. Regardless of how many completions you have, if you throw 45 passes and can't get around 300 yards from that through the air, that's a bad sign. It says that more or less the Broncos defense is holding their own against that passing game.
Or Donnie Avey dropped a 35-yard pass. Fasano a 20-yard pass. Dwayne Bowe 2 passes are intermediate, 15 to 20 yards.
This has been ongoing all season long for the Chiefs, and it's not just an issue of drop passes. Alex Smith has struggled. Alex Smith has struggled to get the ball downfield, and not even as a Chief. He's struggled his entire career. His entire career, he's struggled to get the ball downfield, and it's very rare that he ever throws for 300 yards. I believe he's only done it a handful of times his entire career.
Which brings me to my next point. Andy Reid, why are you going away from the strength of your offense? Right. Why are you playing into the hands of the Denver Broncos? And then, why give it to Jamal Charles only 16 times? He's got one of the best. He's got the highest average yards per carry of any running back from a career standpoint in history. How could you only give it to him 16 times? Andy Reid never utilized Deuce Staley. He never utilized Brian Westbrook or even LaShawn McCoy correctly in Philadelphia. So this has been a continuing theme for Andy Reid throughout his career. But then you have 4th down and 6. You're down by 2 scores. Or 3 scores it was. You're down by 3 scores. 4th down and 6, you're at the 40-yard line of the Broncos, and you punt it away with about 8 minutes left in the game. If they had gotten that 1st down and even kicked a field goal, that last drive, not the desperation drive at the complete end, but the last drive would have been for the tie. You're playing too conservatively too. So a lot of this is on Andy Reid. It's on Alex Smith. I don't understand why Kansas City decided that they're going to try to push the ball downfield when they haven't been doing that all year, and it didn't work.
And they push the ball downfield only the way that they like to push the ball downfield, which is not very far. We're talking most passes under 5 yards.
There was deep passes throughout the entire.
There was. But that's not their strength of execution.
Yeah.
Dwayne Bowe led the team in receiving yards with 57. Dexter McCluster was right behind him with 53, and both guys are right around the 10 yards per catch mark from that game, more or less. It's just not the strength of the Chiefs' defense. What their strength was neutralized, and that's a concern. You gotta consider this moving on into the season when playoffs come around. Are the Chiefs going to be able to compete at the highest level against teams that know how to score points?
And the bigger question here for Kansas City is, a lot of the teams that are contending for a Super Bowl have a true number 1 receiver, somebody that the quarterback can rely on. Dwayne Bowe left a dime bag on the grass on Sunday, pun intended there. He was targeted 14 times and he had 4 catches. He's probably
still a little hungover from smoking, I suppose, right?
Yeah, that's
his weekly activities. He hasn't recovered.
Maybe the Sonic threw him off a little bit. Listen, you need to have someone that's going to be able to provide a consistent target for the quarterback too. And I don't think Dwayne Bowe is going to be that guy. He cannot get in separation. He struggled catching the ball, period, in the game. So that's another issue. But again, you're looking at Kansas City and Denver now have the same record. Denver held court at home. We're looking 2 weeks from now. You're going to be playing in Kansas City.
Yeah, we got a rematch. Right.
A rematch in front of a amped-up Arrowhead crowd. So it's not the end-all, be-all for Kansas City. They lost 1 game on the road against a team that's won 20 of the last 21 regular season games, right?
Right.
So,
but what this means mostly for the Denver Broncos in my eyes, because I was getting kind of concerned about the Broncos with Peyton Manning being able to stay healthy. They got 6 more games to go, and if they can play like this and protect Peyton Manning like this and keep his jersey clean, that's scary and that's promising for them moving forward. I was wondering if he was going to be able to finish the season at the way that he started deteriorating, his ankles and his inability to move around. And he's getting old and he's getting fragile. And the last thing you want is Peyton Manning taking too many hits. And they showed last night that they have the ability to protect their number 1 guy. And That's what they need to do moving forward.
I agree 100%. What we're going to do right now is we're going to go to commercial. We're going to come back with Joe Bussell. You know him as NFL Philosophy on Twitter. He's a contributor for Pro Football Focus, and he's a great football mind. So we'll be right back on Football Debate Central Radio.
Sometimes I feel like I don't have a partner. Sometimes I feel like my only friend is the city I live in, the city of angels.
You are listening to Football Debate Central Radio on the Pro Football Central Radio Network.
Football fans, check out the official t-shirt apparel shop for the Pro Football Central Radio Network. Check out bigfrog.com/Cincinnati. That's bigfrog.com/Cincinnati. You think it, we ink it. They have an awesome 24-hour turnaround time. You can also visit them at their fabulous store over at Anderson Town Center, 7426 Beachmont Avenue, Cincinnati, Ohio 45255. That's bigfrog.com/Cincinnati.
Hey, this is Brandon Alisaglu. You can find me on Twitter at Brandon Alisaglu.
And this is Nick Castora. You can find me at Nick Castora. We are the hosts of Lions Central Radio. You can find us every Tuesday night at 10 p.m. on the Pro Football Central Radio Network.
In the night, I hear him talk, the coldest story ever told. Somewhere far along this road, he lost his soul to a woman so heartless. How could you be so heartless? Oh, how could you be so...
And welcome back to the Football Debate Central Radio on the Pro Football Central Radio Network. We're now joined by Joe Bussell. He is a former executive, or he worked for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and he's a PFF contributor, and also you know him as NFL Philosophy on Twitter. Hey, Joe, how you doing, man?
Doing good, fellas. How about you guys?
Great. I just realized now that we are co-workers at Pro Football Focus. That's pretty cool. When did you start there, dude?
Just the last 3 weeks. Just doing a weekly piece for PFF Fantasy.
Awesome. Great stuff there. I have to check it out. Okay, looking at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers here. They won 2 in a row. They almost won 3 in a row if they could have held off the Seattle Seahawks in Seattle a few weeks back. Mike Glennon. He played really well last week, and in my opinion, he's played really well throughout his entire starting tenure this season in Tampa Bay. What is your take on him, Joe, moving forward this year and maybe even into 2014?
You know, I think it's too early to tell with Mike. I get this question almost every day from all of my Bucs followers, and it really is. It's just too early to tell. Luckily, we've got 6 more games on. The book right now is that he's fairly efficient with the football. He doesn't turn it over a whole lot. He needs to work on his deep ball accuracy, which is odd because that's basically what the entire offense is based around, or at least it was whenever Freeman was the quarterback. They've kind of reined it in a little bit. They're running more over the middle, more crossing routes. They're using the tight end more. And that's probably a product of Glennon's decision-making as well. He looked fantastic yesterday. He was 20 of 23. 230 yards, I believe. His last incompletion came with about 2.5 minutes left in the first quarter, and he didn't throw another incompletion the rest of the day. Part of that was because Vincent Jackson decided to play very inspired football yesterday, and he was coming down with anything that was thrown his way. Glennon, he was efficient. He played kind of an Alex Smith type of day, but did take a couple of shots downfield. That he was fortunate that V-Jack was the receiver. And that's completely in contrast to how Glennon played on Monday night against the Dolphins. I thought the Dolphins was the worst game of his career in the NFL so far. And that wasn't even really against a great Miami Dolphins defense. They had a good pass rush. Glennon is a little more mobile than you might think just by looking at him because he's tall, he's lanky, he's kind of awkward, in the way that he moves.
Joe,
he's with the football.
Did you scout him coming out at NC State at all? Did you check out his film in college before he ended up with Tampa Bay?
Yeah, I did. I had him kind of as a mid-round pick, 3rd or 4th rounder, I believe, just because. He misses a lot of opportunities downfield. He likes to move around in the pocket, and he drops his eyes a little too early. And that's something that he's shown on film this year as well. there'll be guys running wide open down the middle of the field or down the seams, and he elects to take the shorter route just because, that's who he is. He likes to try to get the first down, and whenever he goes deep, it's normally a called shot, and that's, defined by either the play call or by the coaching staff.
Right.
It's never, he never makes that decision. He almost never makes that decision on his own.
To make the shot throw?
Yeah, the shot throw is typically something that is set up by the offensive play call, and Glennon never goes. Glennon likes to read from back to front. He'll read deep and in, it's closer to him, and he never goes back out. So if he makes that initial read that the deep ball isn't there, then he usually won't throw it. The only time that he does do that is whenever he scrambles outside of the pocket, and then he'll take a shot downfield maybe as a last resort.
I agree with you that he was a mid-round talent coming out. I saw similar things to what you just described. And my biggest issue with Glennon was and is he seems to get a little frazzled with pressure up the middle in his face, a collapsing pocket. And if I'd like to see him work on his poise and those kinds of components where he doesn't fall
I disagree
apart.
with that. I liked his poise. He was one of the most poised quarterbacks to go into Seattle over the last 2 years in that game. He looked really comfortable in that game.
He does at times. He does see ghosts in the pocket. There was a play where against Seattle where they had a chance to steal the game on a late drive, and it was an extremely crucial drive. If they went down and got a field goal, it pretty much ended the game. And he missed Tim Wright streaking down the middle of the field because he left the pocket too early. It was the play where he ended up running to his left, and Earl Thomas absolutely lit him up. It was third down, and Earl Thomas come in and just absolutely lit Glennon up because he didn't slide on the play. There are times he sees ghosts in the pocket, he leaves a little too early, but he also does show poise. I mean, the two things are kind of mutually exclusive. He's very poised, but at the same time, he never panics, but he does scramble a little earlier than he should.
Interesting.
Is that anticipating pressure that's not coming, in your opinion, Joe?
What's that? Say that again?
Is that the anticipation of pressure that's not coming? That
right.
Forces him out of the pocket?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. There's times when it looks like he doesn't trust his O-line. He'll see guys flash by him, that a tackle will kick out and run upfield and not allow him to bend around the edge. And that's whenever I see Glennon, he kind of steps up, and if he doesn't have the throw there as soon as he steps up as that guy passes by him, that's whenever he tends to want to run to his left or to his right, or absolutely get out of the pocket as much as possible. And if he just tends to hold himself there, there's usually something that's going to be open there because the offensive line has played well over the last few weeks. Ever since that Seattle game, they've played tremendously well. They've gotten Ted Larson out of the lineup. They've been playing Jamon Meredith at left guard, and that's made a huge difference. And they're also getting back to being able to run the football efficiently, and that's helped the O-line a lot as well.
Alex Miglio and I were having a conversation on Twitter earlier today about Mike James, and then obviously with Rainey more recently being able to have success running the ball, as to where Doug Martin didn't earlier. I pointed out that Mike Glennon is playing better football than Josh Freeman did. Obviously, that goes without saying. Is that the primary reason for that, Joe, or is it more with offensive line improving?
I think it's a combination of things. There's a ton that's going on there. They've added personnel. They're running a lot more. They're bringing Creamy in as their sixth offensive lineman on a lot of snaps, especially late in games. They're bringing in that tackle eligible guy. And they're also getting to plays that really work in their favor. They're running a lot of halfback ISO up to the 8 gap, and Lord's really good on those blocks going straight up through that gap, kicking a guy out. And then Glennon's play definitely helped spread the offense a lot. And I was thinking about this as I was rewatching the game from yesterday this morning. And it doesn't seem like teams are stacking the box as much against guys like Rainey or against guys like Brian Leonard or Mike James. They're not as concerned about them, and they're letting them have those yards. Whereas if it was Doug Martin, you saw 8, 9, and even 10-man boxes at times because of the way that the Bucs are lining up. So now whenever they bring in the tackle-eligible guy, they're bringing in 8 men in the box, and that's all they're facing. The defense isn't loading up against the run the way that they did against Dougie whenever he was in there. So it's a combination of a lot of different things happening, but I really like the play calling that they're getting back to. They're running a lot of ISO, especially to the weak side, which has been really really good. They're not trying to stretch plays to the outside very much. They're staying in the A and B gap, and they're running downhill. There's a lot more pulling. They're pulling guards. They're pulling centers. They're pulling everybody at this point. Just about every single play, you see somebody pulling into the hole where the running back's going to follow.
And, Joe, one last thing on Mike Glennon, then move on, obviously, to Greg Schiano here and what he's done this year. Is Mike Glennon, you and I have talked about this, and it's been talked about quarterback purgatory, and whether or not selecting quarterback outside the first round is a great idea. You use statistics in terms of who's starting, who's not, franchise quarterbacks, and so forth. I don't want to get too much into detail on that. Specific to Tampa Bay, is Mike Glennon the long-term answer? Do you need to see more this year? Or are you at the point right now where they should spend a high first-round pick on a quarterback?
I mean, as much as he's progressed through this year, and from what I saw on college film, I'd say that if he continues that progression, there is a chance that he is the guy. As of right now, I'm still not sure. That Miami game still really weighs on me because there wasn't a whole lot there to like. Like I said, it's fortunate that there's 6 more games going forward. The coaching has really evolved and gotten better, as well as Glennon's play as well. So I would say again, it's still too early. From my pre-draft evaluations, I tend to lean that he isn't the guy. That they will need to go with, a quarterback early in the first round. And the way that I see it, they'll know whether they should or not, because if they're picking in the top 5 picks, you can go ahead and assume that Glennon isn't the guy because, they only won a couple of games. They basically lost from here on out. Whereas if they're picking in the middle of the round somewhere, you probably want to hold off, use that pick somewhere else, maybe use Glennon as a game manager as in an Alex Smith type of situation. Tell them to be efficient with the football and let your defense win games for you.
All right, now let's go to the hot seat question of the week here on Football Debate Central Radio.
Has Tampa Bay Buccaneers head coach Greg Schiano done enough to save his job and to avoid the unemployment line?
Joe, I'll let you answer that one first. Obviously, you have a more insider's feel in what's going on in Tampa Bay. Do you think that Schiano's done enough for the last few weeks to keep his job with the Buccaneers?
At this point, no. I mean, there's been a whole lot of progression, but it's no, not yet. If he wins out by any chance, then yeah, I think they probably keep him. If he splits into the schedule, you're probably going to be he's still probably going to be out. If he goes under 500, I still think he's out. And it's not the Glazers to fire somebody in season. If they would have done it, they would have done it already. So we've got 6 more games. If he goes 3-3, I think there's a 50-50 shot that he stays. If he goes over that, I think he probably does stay. If he goes under that, then yeah, I think he's out. There's just been too much turmoil and chaos going on around the organization. And I know that the Glazers are very proud of their organization, and they don't like the way that it looks right now.
Yeah, and I would probably agree with you on that one. I don't think that at this point Schiano has done enough to keep the job. He needs to do a little bit more in terms of what's happened in the locker room, right? What's happened off the field and that entire situation. Do the Glazers owe it to the fan base in Tampa Bay to cut ties with him after this season, or is it more about how the rest of the season plays out, Joe?
I think it's about how the rest of the season plays out. And Brian, you may be a better judge of this than me. I think the Glazers owe it to the players. I mean, the players are who they're really invested in, and if the players have a change of heart and they want Schiano around, I think you appeal to the players and say, hey, we'll give them another year. If they don't, if they say, hey, we'd really rather have someone else, we really don't want to play for this guy, again, Ryan, maybe that's something you can kind of address, but that's tough. It's more on the players. It's more on the players to me, and how ownership takes them than anything.
Yeah, and actually, I don't know if you can hear this, but I would say that the players are probably not going to back a Schiano return, and that's going to definitely hurt his chances to get back into this thing. But ultimately, if they start winning games and keep winning games, you're going to see more and more comments like what we see about them finally being a team, feeling like they're coming together. And a lot of the evils of Greg Schiano are actually not going to be quite. They're not going to be quite as. He's not going to be depicted as quite the villain as he is currently. Wins take care of everything.
Exactly. And you know as well as anybody that it's the day after a big win. They just beat a division rival and they beat them handily. So everybody's, all going to be positive now. If something goes wrong next week and they lose next week, then the pitchforks may be out again.
I agree. You know what I wanted to talk to you about? I read your article about taking the path less traveled. The quarterback, franchise quarterback, spending too much money. Teams spending too much money on their franchise quarterback, and the salary cap really hasn't gone up enough to justify the amount of money that they're spending on their quarterbacks. And you believe that they're eventually going to get to a point where it's going to the cost is going to outperform their on-field production, correct?
Right. I think that's the way that we're trending now. We could see there's been reports that because the cap has remained level over the last few years, that we could see a jump as much as 10 or 12 million this year. And if that happens, quarterbacks will be fine. I think teams will still pay for them. But there is a possibility that teams would think that paying a quarterback is a little bit too much and takes away from the rest of the team, because they don't want to they don't want to fill out their roster with a ton of just a guys, a ton of scrubs that just see the field and are targets. With anytime you have a weak link on the field, they're going to get targeted. It was kind of like Peyton Manning targeting Marcus Cooper last night. He was the weak link on the field, and they ate him up all night long. And with the Bucs, it's anytime the cornerbacks Michael Adams or Leonard Johnson are on the field, the Bucs get eat up by whoever those two guys are guarding. So yeah.
Do you think that that's kind of what could be happening to some degree with Joe Flacco and the Baltimore Ravens and their contract situation, and or the Green Bay Packers? And do you believe that it's like this concern is something for the future, or do you see quarterbacks being overpaid currently right now, like some of those examples?
I think the system of the way that contracts are done right now is tough, because it really seems like players, and of course they would at any chance they got, but they're using leverage as much as they can, especially quarterbacks, because quarterbacks know how important the position is. And because of the Ravens situation as far as the cap last year, Joe Flacco knew that the Ravens couldn't tag him, because it would have absolutely destroyed their cap. They would have had to dump a ton of players, and they already were letting players go. They traded Anquan Bolden away because they needed to get under the cap. So Flacco had the leverage, and his leverage was, hey, you pay me a total amount of over $100 million and give me this much guaranteed, and then, I'll give you a low cap number in the first few years. You can defer those payments later on as long as I get the guaranteed money. And there's going to be things like that happen that can destroy a team's cap. And Brady was the antithesis of Joe Flacco. He took a much lower deal than market price for himself, because he knew that the Patriots weren't in a tough situation.
I look at that. Oh, go ahead, Ryan. Sorry.
No, I was just saying that was smart that Brady was able to do that and foresee that he would rather win some games than make a couple extra $1 million. And you kind of have to make those kind of decisions as a quarterback if you want to be, on a prominent team and help build a dynasty.
That's exactly right. It's either you want the money or you want the team, and you can't really have both. Brady decided that he's made enough money. He'd rather have the team, and they've got a real shot.
That's a decision that Russell Wilson's going to have to make in Seattle, specifically in the next year or two. You're looking at Richard Sherman, Earl Thomas, Bobby Wagner, KJ Wright, Percy Harvin, Marshawn Lynch, who are all going to be demanding top money for their positions. It's not sustainable for Russell Wilson to be making $130 million over the course of a 6 or 7 year span. To a lesser extent, you're looking at Colin Kaepernick, depending on how the rest of the season goes out after this year, signing an extension with San Francisco. Is that going to be an issue with both teams moving forward, Joe, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the 49ers were already pressed up against the cap this offseason. They had to make a few moves. The good thing about the 49ers is they've been stockpiling picks. I mean, I think they had like 14 or something this year, and they're up to 10 or 11 already for next year. They're stockpiling picks because that way they can afford to let those big guys go. Kaepernick is going to be kind of the linchpin of it all, whether he's going to get that big contract or whether he's going to get a mediocre contract and allow them to continue to build this team. They're not going to be able to continue to pay Patrick Willis and Navarro Bowman, and Justin Smith took a lighter deal than probably what he could have gotten elsewhere, but he wanted to stay with the team, and that's those are sacrifices that players have to make if they want to play on a winning team. Or you can have like the Saints are going to be tied up. They're going to have nearly 25% of their cap tied up in Drew Brees and Jimmy Graham if and when they decide they're not going to let Jimmy Graham go, but to have a quarter of your salary cap put into two players is really detrimental to the future of the franchise because it makes you go younger. The Packers, there are very few teams that can draft consistently well enough over a long period of time to be able to support a big-time contract like Aaron Rodgers or Drew Brees to be able to win long term.
And if you look at San Francisco, it's a little bit different situation. Joe Staley signed for a team-friendly deal. So did Anthony Davis. Two of the bookend tackles are making far less than market value. With Seattle, that's where I'm worried about. I'm not sure that Richard Sherman's going to take that less than market value, or Earl Thomas is going to do that. Bobby Wagner is going to be one of the top 5 inside linebackers in the NFL in the next couple of years. So that's a larger concern that they might turn out to be a little bit more like, I guess I'd say, the Pittsburgh Steelers, right?
Which, by the way, you bring up the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I'm interested to see who's going to be that first GM, as you alluded to, Joe. Who's going to be that first GM that has an opportunity to re-sign a quote-unquote franchise quarterback and turns it down because they feel like it isn't cost-effective. And that's going to be a big controversy. It's going to be a big risk, and whoever is the first one to do something like that is going to get a lot of heat. And Roethlisberger might be that guy, right, in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite possible. And, I mean, the way the Roethlisberger situation might work out is they're probably going to try to trade him. If he wants out, if he goes to the Rooneys and say, hey, I want to go somewhere else, I'm not happy with where the franchise is going, the Rooneys will have two options. They'll say, you know what, you can either play your way through it, or we can trade you, or we can fire Tomlin. Those are the three options that they'll really have, because it sounds like Roethlisberger, or maybe they just fire Todd Haley, because that seems to be where the disconnect is. But yeah, Roethlisberger might be that first guy where they decide, hey, we're gonna dump you, we're gonna trade you, or we're just not gonna re-sign you. The tough thing for a GM is to let a guy like that go and know that he's not going to get anything back from him immediately, and know that the best that he's going to get is probably a third rounder as far as a compensation pick. Whatever he signs with another team and then goes out and plays and performs, but that third pick isn't going to come in the next draft. It's going to be in the draft after that. So it's 2 years down the road that he's going to be rewarded for it. And, if a GM lets that guy go, he may not ever even see that draft pick if they perform awfully the next season. He's going to be on a short leash if you let the guy like a franchise quarterback like Roethlisberger go, and ownership isn't happy with the way that they perform the next season. So there's a lot of dynamics to it, but it's going to be it's going to be one of those things where a guy agonizes over that decision, and people are going to jump to immediate conclusions thinking, oh, how could he do this? But he will have already considered this from every angle available, and it's not a light decision that he'll make for sure.
Hey, Joe, we really want to thank you for coming on the show. Great stuff, as always. Do you want to tell everybody where they can find you on Twitterverse and around the internet world?
Yeah, that's at NFL Philosophy is my Twitter handle, and then NFLphilosophy.com is my blog, and then of course contributing to PFF as well. And hopefully everybody already knows and is already following along.
Great stuff, Joe. We really do appreciate you coming on, and we'll talk to you later on in the season, hopefully.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, guys.
Great insight, man.
Thanks.
You are listening to Football Debates Central Radio on the Pro Football Central Radio Network.
Cigar fans, check out fifthdowncigar.com and enter the coupon code PFC to get 10% off your order. Lots of nice high-end cigars. That's fifthdowncigar.com. Enter the code PFC for 10% off your order.
Can't stop, addicted to the shindig. Chop top, it says I'm gonna win big. Choose not to life of imitation. Distant us into the reservation.
Who is more to blame for the 49ers passing game? Offensive coordinator Greg Roman or quarterback Colin Kaepernick?
I'm touching on this first, Ryan.
Go for it.
I wrote an article on Yahoo today that came out that asked whether or not Roman should be on the hot seat or not. My conclusion is a yes, emphatic yes on that. There's a combination of different factors here. Obviously, Colin Kaepernick has not progressed the way that many had hoped he would in his third season, but the play calling for the 49ers has been downright atrocious. And more so than that, don't you blame the coordinator and the head coach when a quarterback doesn't progress during an offseason in which he should have progressed?
Well, you can also blame the quarterback as well, naturally.
Yeah, of course.
But go on. So play calling has been an issue. That would probably fall into the category of Greg Roman's fault. But at the same time, Colin Kaepernick has left a lot of plays on the field that he could have made if he saw his reads accurately, saw his reads properly and on time. He seems to get flustered way too easy, too quick. It moves around, and the way that he moves around in the pocket is inefficient. He'll usually run to one side, closing off half of the field, and a lot of times shutting down reads that were there, open, ready. He's just now starting to do more of his checkdowns, but in the first half of the season, he was struggling mightily and seeing open checkdowns to Frank Gore and some of the guys, in the short to intermediate zones of his passing trees. I don't know. I agree with you. Greg Roman has shown a tendency to try. After what they did with Green Bay, it seemed as if he was going to make a name for himself and turn this offense into one of the most explosive, most dynamic offenses in the NFL, passing for over 400 yards consistently, and they went away from what they did best, and they had to kind of remind themselves that at the end of the day, they're a team that runs the ball, they're a team that plays physical football, and they got away from that. They lost their identity, and they tried to find it. They did, winning some games, but they're not able to find that balance in any given game. They haven't been able to be effective and execute in the passing and running game at the same time. That's an issue that I would say falls more in line with Greg Roman than Colin Kaepernick.
And the simple fact that Frank Gore has attempted 3 rushes in the fourth quarter of the last 2 games when the 49ers were leading both games at some point in the fourth quarter is a travesty. That's the biggest issue in my opinion. Everybody talks about how well the Saints have played on defense this year. Listen, coming into the game, they ranked dead last in the NFL. Opposing running backs were averaging 5 yards per rush. And how do you let Frank Gore rush the ball 1 time in the fourth quarter?
it's not right. It's bad play calling, like you said. But I got to give Greg Roman credit for one thing, and probably a combination of him and Harbaugh, that they've been able to establish one of the most dynamic and versatile running attacks in the NFL that we've seen in a long time, actually. And it's being copied and reproduced by other teams this year. Like the Carolina Panthers played the 49ers game plan better than the 49ers did in that win 2 weeks ago. But outside of that, they're just not able to establish balance. They're not able to correct the same mistakes. We're seeing the same mistakes week in and week out. Colin Kaepernick does not look like he's learning from his mishaps from a week earlier or a week before that or a week before that. It's just a continuation of the same type of thing, the same type of flawed execution. And you want to see a change. You don't want to see these same things happening over and over again on the offensive side of the ball.
But listen, he played well. He played well on Sunday. That's where people are not focusing on. If it wasn't for a couple drop passes, we talked about this with Alex Smith before. If it wasn't for the one drop pass in Carolina by Vance McDonald, the 49ers win that game. He hit him down the seam on a 45-yard pass. Vance McDonald just drops the ball. It was a good play by Kuechly, but still, you can't have that. You have to have pass catchers that can give you a consistent target. The only person that's able to do that for the 49ers thus far this year is Anquan Bolden. Vernon Davis when he's been healthy, but he's been banged up pretty much all year. That's the primary issue with Colin Kaepernick, is he does not have that safety net to go to like he had with Crabtree last year.
Your gauge for Kaepernick playing well is you set a really low bar for him. I wouldn't say that he's been playing well. I don't think he played well last week. I think he's been struggling for quite some time, and pretty much the majority of this entire season, aside from week one, he has struggled to get first downs on third and more than 5, or even third and short.
Well, he was 5 on that touchdown scoring drive on Sunday. He was 5 for 6 on third and longer than 5.
And has been a bad quarterback on third downs in general. And he's thrown the ball. He's exceeded 200 yards passing twice all season long. And that's a shame in today's NFL, where
when you're attempting the least amount of passes in the NFL, that's bound to happen.
Is he attempting the least amount of passes per game?
Yes. Everybody says the Niners have the 32nd ranked pass defense in the NFL, but they pass the ball the least amount of times in the NFL. The issue with them is they decide they're going to pass the ball in situations where they shouldn't be. You have the ball at the 43-yard line Sunday. You're up by 3 points. Okay? You run 3 straight passes with less than 8 minutes left in the game.
Mm-hmm.
You have 3rd and 2 in the second quarter. You run a sweep with Kendall Hunter, and you leave Frank Gore on the sideline. Kendall Hunter got the first down because he broke 4 tackles behind the line of scrimmage, but that's not bullying a defense that was given 5 yards per rush. You have 3rd down and 3, just 4 plays after that on 3rd down, and they run with LaMichael James between the hashes with Frank Gore on the sideline.
Mm-hmm.
That's a larger indicator of failure for the 49ers, is they don't pass the ball often, but when they decide to pass the ball, it's not at the opportunistic times. We saw this against Carolina 2 weeks ago too, where they had a chance to run out the clock. 3 straight passes. What happened? Offensive pass interference on Bolden, holding on the offensive line, and then Kaepernick sacked on 3rd and 28. The interception that Kaepernick threw against Carolina, that was 2nd down and 20 with 50 seconds left and no timeouts. He was trying to throw the ball downfield, something Alex Smith should have done on Sunday Night Football. And people were on him about not doing. So there's a lot more going on than Colin Kaepernick here, and I'm not trying to defend him.
Oh, yeah, no, definitely there's a lot more going on than Colin Kaepernick. And even just looking at the Colin Kaepernick production standpoint or his struggles, that has to some degree that falls on to the coaching staff and their inability to prepare him week in and week out to do what he does best and to avoid making the same mistakes over and over again. If you're either coaching it or you're allowing it to happen.
And it doesn't hurt. help that he's been hit more times than less hit during the entire 5-game winning streak combined. That doesn't help. So the offensive line's been playing like crap too. But I don't want to just sit here and say it's everybody else's fault, not Kaepernick's fault. He has struggled. He has not progressed like anybody wanted him to. The 49ers are 6-4. They are tied with Arizona and Chicago for the final playoff spot. Relatively easy schedule moving forward, but that doesn't mean anything. Teams can get hot. They play Washington, then they play St. Louis. Those are not give me wins for them. So
yeah, I don't like talking about easy schedules because in the NFL there really is no easy schedule. Every game is a game that you can lose if you're not prepared, and we watch that every week. Teams that you don't expect to win are winning, and so easy schedule or not, they're going to have to show up, and they're going to have to figure out how to get this ball down the field more. They need to have a couple more games of at least 250 yards passing, and it doesn't have to be forced. It needs to be an organic thing where they're balanced. They're a balanced attack. They're both run and pass efficient. And right now, either one or the other is going. And only one game, maybe 2 games all season, has the 49ers had a prolific passing attack. Aside from that, they're struggling, and they're a power offense.
That's not utilizing the power offense when they need to be utilizing it.
And they're not utilizing it enough. And like you said, Frank Gore had 13 carries all game. All game. It's ridiculous.
It is, especially when you left 8 carries on the table with Kendall Hunter and LaMichael James in situations that Gore should have been touching the ball.
Who those two combined for 6 carries on the day.
6 carries, okay.
And
in situations where Gore should have touched it, I have no problem with Michael James and Kendall Hunter touching the ball. They're talented running backs. 1st down and 10, you run it with LaMichael James, not 3rd and 2 between the hashes, not in space. That's not what he succeeded with at Oregon. That's not why you drafted him in the 2nd round 2 years ago.
Exactly. And one of the biggest issues I've had with Greg Roman all season long, and I've been saying this over and over again all season long, they have a dynamic 2 tight end set with 2 very talented receivers in Vance McDonald and Vernon Davis. And with all the attention going to Vernon Davis and coverage, with the inability to get those receivers open and have any reliable targets on the outside of Anquan Bolden, they needed to be utilizing Vance McDonald, who is fast.
He's been atrocious
he's big,
this year.
He's strong. He bulls over secondary guys. He gets really good yak yardage, and they give it to him. They target him 1 or 2 times a game at most, and it's a tragedy because he's going to be open a lot of times. He's going to be able to create mismatches, and he's going to be able to keep those chains moving. And they're not utilizing him at all. The lack of utilization of talent on this offense has been glaring, and that is a Greg Roman problem. Not
especially
getting
when the talent is concentrated. Especially when the talent is concentrated.
Utilize the creativity to get LaMichael James in space. You see the way he's able to maneuver and be elusive on special teams, returning kickoffs. He's a very elusive player. Utilize Kendall Hunter. Utilize the short bubble screens and quick slants, things that are high efficiency type passing game to get Kaepernick's confidence up, to get these guys involved, to get some touches on the outside for the receivers. It's like they've reduced themselves to like 4 or 5 pass plays, just with various formations and whatnot, and then no creativity in that realm. It's frustrating.
This would all be moot if the 49ers were 7-3 right now, coming off Sunday's game. It was a 3-point loss against a team that many people probably had pegged as a loss at the start of the year in New Orleans. It wasn't a bad loss in that sense. What gives people a bad taste, especially locally here in the Bay Area and within the Niners circles nationally, is the horrible call late in the game on Bud Brooks, where he hit Drew Brees around the neck area. Right. And Patrick Willis recovered the fumble. It was 49ers would have easily had the ball inside the 40-yard line of the Saints. They would have probably been able to go in for at least a field goal. And the referees call a penalty on Ahmad Brooks. It was a downright atrocious call. I don't care what anybody says. It might be in the rule book, but it's never been called. And that's my issue with that. What is your take?
And I totally agree with you. And sure, I think it falls in the line of a legal call, a correct call. If you're not allowed to touch a player's neck, but players' necks are touched all game long, all the time. Quarterback necks, when sacked, the arm goes around it, and it's never been a concern. It's never been an issue. Ahmad Brooks had more of the upper shoulder, collarbone area than he had any part of the neck. When he avoids helmet to helmet, he avoids dipping down. He tries to not even give the guy a shoulder, just give him a bear hug essentially. But the inertia of that hug kind of causes Drew Brees' neck to jolt a little bit, and the ref decides to call a penalty there at a key point of the game. This is not the kind of football that they should be playing, that they should be calling. It hurts the game. It hurts teams in critical moments, and I almost wanted to turn the TV off when I saw it, and this is kind of where football's headed. It's headed towards a tiny little strike zone on a body, especially for a quarterback. It's the legal realms in which you can hit a quarterback. It's almost asking way too much at those high-speed plays, guys moving around, doing everything they can to get to that quarterback, and they're supposed to find this 8-inch safety zone to hit the guy. And if what Ahmad Brooks did is not allowed, it's really starting to get blurry what is allowed.
Especially earlier in the game when Kaepernick was hit the same way, they didn't call the penalty. If you want consistency and you want to protect the shield, then call the penalty there. The penalty wasn't called against Kaepernick because he's calling Kaepernick. He's in his third year. The penalty was called against Drew Brees because they were playing at home and he's Drew freaking Brees. That's the only reason why it was called on the 49ers. And it did change the outcome of the game. People can point to, Frank Gore dropped a pass. If the 49ers had driven down the field in that 2-minute drive, they would have won the game. Blah, 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 blah. That's fine. Not executing on the field is different than referees taking away a team's ability to win a game. So I don't want to hear those two things. They're not mutually inclusive.
I agree. And we got to think about the consequences of that call. It gave the Saints not only a ball when the 49ers recovered that fumble and were on their way to who knows what was going to happen. Take the ball away from the 49ers, gives it to the Saints, and gives them a first down, and gives them better field position. All because, God, he didn't even have the net, which is the most frustrating part of it all.
6 minutes left in the game. The 49ers are up by 6. They would have recovered that ball inside Saints territory. They probably would have won that game. That's that whole point. And I understand that Frank Gore dropped a wide-open touchdown that would have gone for 60, 70 yards. I get that, but that's not the point that we're trying to discuss here. Ahmad Brooks had this to say to Eric Branch on the San Francisco Chronicle. I didn't hit him with my hand or my helmet. I basically bear-hugged him. That's just how the football is played. I think this blankety-blank is bull blankety-blank football. The way they call stuff these days, it's watered down. It ain't real no more. It was at home. It was Drew Brees, and maybe the officials were for the New Orleans Saints a little bit more than the 49ers. I think it's BS, man. That is the take from the majority of objective people around the National Football League. Not 49er fans, not 49er beat writers, not people that tend to lean towards the 49ers like myself, or you even. That's more specifically what the feeling is around the NFL. And the 49ers would have been 7-3 if they would have won that game, and they would have had it easily a nice shot at making the playoffs. Right now, they're tied with two teams for that final playoff spot. So that is a huge call right there.
Yeah, and this is much bigger than the 49ers. This is much bigger than the 49ers Saints game and what that cost them. This is about how we're going to play this game moving forward and what's allowed and what isn't. And I would say we're at a ratio now where I would say about 50% of the unnecessary roughness, personal foul, helmet to helmet, or defenseless player type hits, about half of those are bad calls. And that's uncalled for. It's unacceptable.
It really is. And it's something we're going to be discussing more in the offseason when we have more time to talk about it, you know. other than that, there's a lot of other things going around in the NFL, so that we have to look at for the remainder of this show. So what we want to discuss here moving forward is the best 4-6 team in the AFC right now on Football Debate Central Radio.
You are listening to Football Debate Central Radio on the Pro Football Central Radio Network.
Hi, this is Exhibit. You're listening to one of my favorite shows on the Pro Football Central Radio Network. Proudly sponsored by my Bonita Platinum and myself, X to the Z Exhibit. Bonita Tequila, the world's only 5 times distilled tequila. Visit BonitaSpirits.com to find it in your local area or ask for it by name.
Football fans, check out ProFootballCentral.com for all the latest NFL news and analysis. Also check out the very popular Pro Football Central Radio Network for awesome NFL talk around the league. Go to ProFootballCentral.com. ProFootballCentral.com.
One day you're here, one day you're there, one day you care. You're so unfair. Sipping from your cup till it runneth over. Holy Grail.
Who is the best 4-6 team in the NFL?
Who?
Vincent? I will take that one.
Go ahead.
Well, there's a lot of 4-6 teams in the NFL, and my favorite is it's got to be. You got to give credit to the team that won the Super Bowl last year, a team that has the ability to come on. I think Joe Flacco's been playing horrible. He's thrown as many touchdowns as he has interceptions. He's not completing the passes he needs to do to complete. He's not anywhere near what we saw from the playoff version of the same guy. I don't know if money's getting into his head, but he can play a lot better. I expect him to play a lot better. That defense is young, sort of retooling, rebuilding, but there's a lot of talent there, and I think they're going to play much better the second half of the season than they did in the first. And they got a good coaching staff, so I look for the Ravens to sort of turn it around and try and make a bid, one last push to get themselves into the playoffs. It's not going to be easy, but I see a winning record at the very least for the Ravens.
I disagree 100%. There's no way they're going to finish with a winning record with the remaining schedule that they have. I don't see that happening. Since their bye week, they're 1-2. They're one win coming in overtime against the Bengals because the Bengals decided that they're going to give that game away. So I disagree. They should easily be 3-7 right now. Joe Flacco is playing disastrous football. Ray Rice had a good game against Chicago on Sunday, but again, we got to look at that being one of the worst run defenses in the NFL at this point. As weird as that is to say, in Chicago, I don't see it. I don't see that team. They play the Jets this upcoming week. The Jets struggle, but we know how they've been win-loss throughout the entire part of the season. Their final 3 games are Detroit, New England, Cincinnati, man. They're not going to win any of those games.
I think they can win Detroit. I think they can win Cincinnati. New England sort of a push. I think they'll be able to get two out of those 3 games.
You think they're going to win 2 out of the 3 games against the Lions on the road? Win. The Lions on the road, the Patriots at home, and the Bengals on the road? Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting considering that they have not beaten a team outside of Cincinnati with a winning record all year.
They haven't played very well all year.
Well, that's why they're that's 10 games in. It's not like we're saying they haven't played well 3 games in. If they haven't played well, that's more of
10 games in. 10 games in, they're 4-6. You're trying to point out to me that they haven't played well. Their record speaks to that. I think of all the 4-6 teams, they are the best. What is your thought on who's the best 4-6 team?
Who? They would probably be in the bottom tier of that. The best 4-6 team for my money right now, and this is going to be very interesting to anybody listening, is Oakland Raiders.
And do you like the Oakland Raiders with Matt McGloin or Terrell Pryor?
Well, it doesn't really matter who they have under center, unless it's not Matt Flynn. I like what they do. I like Rashad Jennings. We had him on the show a few weeks ago. He honestly should be taking over the primary running back duties from Darren McFadden. He's playing extremely well. That defense is playing well at this point. And they've gone up and they played some really good teams very tightly. And that's the thing that I see with them that I don't see with Baltimore. You know, when you lose to Denver on Monday Night Football Week 3, right? Terrell Pryor making his first or second road start of his entire career, and you play pretty well. I know you lose by 2 scores, but you play pretty well. You beat San Diego.
So let me get this straight. The Oakland Raiders are just so talented on both sides of the ball that it doesn't really matter who plays quarterback between Terrell Pryor and Matt McGloin. They're just the best 4-6 team regardless of who's throwing back.
All they need at this point is a quarterback that's not going to turn the ball over.
That's all they need.
That's all they need.
Well, how about the fact that they have scored only 194 points, much less than the Baltimore, well, not much less, but less than the Baltimore Ravens, but much less as far as points allowed. They've allowed 246 points, which is significantly more than the Baltimore Ravens have allowed. The Baltimore Ravens are a better defense and a better offense by all standards that I'm looking at.
They haven't played like that all year. They've had an easier schedule than the Raiders.
Well, the Raiders haven't. The Ravens have played better than the Raiders all year.
Against what competition, dude? If you look
and whose coaching staff do you like? Do you like the Ravens coaching staff or the Raiders coaching staff?
At this point?
Whose quarterback do you like? Do you like the Raiders quarterback or the Ravens quarterback?
At this point, I would take the
Raiders.
Whose
running back do you like? Do you like the Ravens running back?
Hey, can I answer?
Or the Raiders?
Can I answer? Thank you. I like the running back in Oakland better. I like Rashad Jennings better than Ray Rice right now. At this point in their careers, and whether it's McFadden on there too, I like that combination of running backs more than Bernard Pierce and Ray Rice. The way Joe Flacco is playing right now, you take 20 quarterbacks in the NFL over him. Jim Caldwell's been a horrible offensive coordinator. I take the Raiders any day over that. Head coach, of course, you take Harbaugh over Allen. Defensive coach.
Caldwell has not been a horrible offensive coordinator. They've had a lot of injuries. They've been decimated by injuries, and their offensive line has been shaky. And
that's an apologist.
He led them to a Super Bowl last year.
I said I'd take Harbaugh over Allen. I did say I'd take Harbaugh over Allen. I was saying that's an apologist attitude. The 49ers have played with injuries all year. They're 6-4. The Seahawks have been ravished by injuries. They're 10-1. You know, I mean, if we're going to get on Mike Smith about the Falcons being 2-8, then we're definitely going to be getting on another team. Even just, I don't care. Looking specifically at 2013, you look at it that way. You don't look at 2012. You look at 2013.
Well, it sounds like you're looking at a 1 week. You're taking it week by week. Because to say that Rashad Jennings is better than Ray Rice is just, you're too in the moment. You're in the moment. And you're not looking at the big picture. Overall, when you're building a team, you don't build your team. You don't pick Rashad Jennings over Ray Rice. You don't pick Matt McGloin or Terrell Pryor over Joe Flacco. You don't pick any receiver on the Oakland Raiders over Torrey Smith. You don't pick the Oakland Raiders pass rush over the Baltimore Ravens pass rush. You don't take the Oakland Raiders secondary over the 49ers, over the Ravens secondary. All around, the Ravens are a better team on paper. They're a better coaching staff, and they haven't been playing well. But that's what we're talking about here, 4-6 teams that are better than their record, better than what they've been playing like. I think the Oakland Raiders, the team that you mentioned, have been playing above expectations. They've been overachieving. The Ravens have been
we're gonna actually have to leave it there. We're running out of time, Ryan. That's something we're gonna discuss after Week 12 and see what happens between those two teams in Week 12 and hash on it a little bit later on. And we want to thank Joe Bussell for coming on Football Debate Central Radio today, and we want to thank everybody for listening. We'll be back next week.